Alright guys, this is Robin Hood's Homestead. In the last video I did non-firearm weapons for shit hit the fan, and I described to you guys in the video I was going to be doing next was about this. This is the old hickory 7-inch knife. I have another one that I showed in that video, but it has some wear and tear and some years on it, so I went out and bought a new one. I said that there was a little tipper, old school tipper trick that you can do for a sheath for this thing, and some people might already know what it is, but what that is this. This is a 7-inch K-bar, yes, K-bar, like the USMC, United States Marine Corps duty knife, the K-bar sheath. Most of your 7-inch sheaths for your K-bars, as long as it's not the hard plastic kind, will fit your 7-inch old hickory knife. I'll show you how it fits up on the outside here. It does a pretty good job. It doesn't even mess with the drainage hole there. And it fits in there perfect. Now, there ain't a whole lot of wobble. It is not a... Oh, there's a little retention, but the snap also works as long as you don't, you know, don't do a whole lot with it. But it'll hold it for carrying around in the field and around your yard and homestead, which is the important part. Because that's what this is. This is the ultimate shit hit the fan knife, you know, for homesteading. Your shit hit the fan homestead knife. That's this. That's this. This thing does everything that you can imagine on the homestead, and it complements your tomahawk, axe, or whatever else you have. You could fight with this, you know, it's very thin. And that thing is very thin. This is a 5-in-1, because I'm going to be using that here in a minute, because in this video we're also going to be taking the scales off of this. We're going to be gluing the scales back on. I'm going to see if this one, because it's a new one, it's a newer made one. I'm going to see if this one has the hidden third hole in the handle. If it does, then I'm going to see if I have a pin that'll fit it, and we'll put a third pin in this. I'm not quite sure if we're going to sand and restain it, but you might. One thing I'm going to show you with a ferrule rod is where you're going to want to put your striking notch for a ferrule rod. Most people want to do everything on the back. I cannot stand that. I cannot stand the fact that people want to put a 90-degree spine on it, because when you choke up to do any kind of carving or any kind of tasks, you have that 90-degree spine pushing in on your thumb or the meat of your hand, and it creates a hot spot that it doesn't need to be there. You know, yeah, it's cool for doing your little whatever tasks, but as far as a striking area for a ferrule rod, alright, I suggest the very bottom if you can get away with it, because down there, especially with a knife this big, you have plenty of blade. When you choke up, here's a little tip from the carver community, people who do a lot of carving. When you put your thumb on the back of the blade, alright, a lot of people try to do this little number where you're doing it the very basic, where you don't really have a whole lot of leverage with a knife this small, or a knife this big. With a smaller knife, yeah, that's fine, but you know, if you have a 4-inch knife, right here, this is the middle of the blade. So most people, when you carve, you put your thumb in the middle of the blade. It gives you the most control, gives you the most power of what you're cutting on. When you're doing press cuts and you're trying to notch. In fact, I'll be right back. Pause it. Sorry about that. I had to go get me a greenwood stick to illustrate my point. The base of this is about the size of my pinky, diameter of my pinky. The other end's about the size of a number 2 pencil. But with a tri-stick, I'm going to illustrate a point here. You can go in here and you can practice your notches, and as you see, I'm going up all the way to about the middle. You gotta be real careful when you're doing this, because if this slips, you will cut yourself to the bone. If you have an anvil, you can use the anvil. If not, I suggest doing the push cut method, where you just gently rock it back and forth while adding pressure along the back. And this will show you. This will show you here that you can get some good cutting performance. And look how high up on the blade I am. That's kind of the point I'm trying to illustrate here. You don't have to have that very bottom, and that's a pretty decent notch. And I could go through and I could show you more, but I'm just going to do that same notch at the very small end to show you guys that with a knife this big you can do some pretty small carving tasks. Wouldn't want to do a net needle with this, but unless you're hugging an ocean, you probably won't need one anyway. And there's ways to make needles or nets without net needles. You can do it by hand. And using a gauging card and overhand knots, you could probably do it. There's another one. Very small. Not very straight on that one side, so I'm going to straighten that up a little bit. Woo! See? Gotta be careful on that thin end. That's why you always keep about 4 inches back from the notch you're cutting. Alright, so what I'm going to do here, same thing. You're going to rock back and forth using about, I like to do this method where you're using your pointer finger as a leverage point. And I just run the knife back and forth, gently severing those fibers. And then you work the knife down. But you know, an anvil, I'm trying to illustrate a point without an anvil here, but if you have an anvil or even a stump, because this knife is used in the kitchen, it's so thin, you can get that same kind of, sorry. Let's see if I can do it. I'm going to come over here and just do a little basic chop here. Alright. Chopped it kind of deep here, so I got to be careful. So you're going to see me choke up a little bit just to get some of this finer detailing work. But with an anvil, you can get an even prettier notch, as you see. You know, this is just green wood. You could probably you can get away with a lot of the same stuff. I suggest green wood because most things are better with green wood. Alright, so I'm going to get on to the build. So I'm going to take y'all down to my shop. Actually, I'm just going to pick y'all up when I'm done when I'm done with the... One quick thing, when you're prying the handle scales off, it's best to use something thin and rigid, like this putty knife or 5-in-1 tool, and you're going to want to pry towards the label side. This is the female ends, from what I've read. Alright, so hard lessons learned. When you're taking the scales off of the knife, try to do it in a way that you capture the pins, because these went flying across and I had to try to move a bunch of shit to find them. But what we're going to do now is I have a file clamped into my vise here, because this knife does have a secret third hole. And what I've done here is this is let me dig through this stuff, find out the information y'all are going to want. This is a round slotted Hillman number 1024 by 2-inch machine screw that's brass. I found that these are a lot easier to work with because of the threads. Makes it easier to get glue on if it's an exact match. But this one is not. This one's a little bit on the big side. So what we're going to do, which I could probably force it through if I really wanted to, but I really don't really want to do that. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to take these scales, I'm going to line them up back on the thing here, which we're not going to glue anything yet or do any kind of crazy work to them. But what we're going to do, we're going to clamp them together. We're going to figure out about, which this is going to be most of it, so I'm going to just do most of it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp it in my power drill. If I don't send it across my building. I'm going to clamp this in my power drill. And I'm going to run this. I'll get it running. Alright. God dang it. If I can get it running, we're going to clamp this in the power drill. And we're going to line her all up here. And we're just going to very simply, we're going to take this, we're going to run it across the file until it decreases in diameter enough that it'll fit through the hole. It's very simple. I'm going to pick you up when that's done. Alright, this has been about 5 minutes later. Now what you're kind of looking for is with the scale on it, you want about an 1/8 to a 1/16 of an inch, or 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch, just enough to peen over. Alright, now you don't actually have to worry that much about going the rest of the way through, because the other side is going to just get cut off anyway. You just want the part that's going through the handle, or to the blade, to be enough to get through the, through the blade. Now what we're going to do is we're probably going to continue it enough to where to cover both ends, because we have to drill a diameter hole in the wood and we don't want to have to do a bunch of different sizes. Alright, so I'm going to pick you up here in a minute when I get that done. And then we'll epoxy everything back together, and then we'll go in and I'll show you how I'm going to finish the blade out. And then I'm going to trace with a Sharpie to show you how much you're going to notch if you're going to do the spark notch for a ferrule rod. Alright, so now that we got that done, all we did was... Alright guys, and here we are. I had to pack that little bit with some epoxy because the peen got a little crooked on it, but first time for everything. And this is my first attempt at rehandling one of these and dealing with two different kinds of pins. So right now what we're going to do is pretty up the handle, get some of the excess epoxy off of here using a paper towel. Probably not the best thing, but this is going to be part one, because next I'm definitely not going to have enough space for a whole nother video's worth of content here. But for an $18 knife, which after this dries I'm definitely going to have to sand it, probably going to have to restain it too. So there's that, and there's a little bit more on this side than there is on this side, but I think that's mostly due to me oversizing the pin a little bit. But there we go. This is where we're at now on it. And I'll pick you back up in the next video, I reckon. But for $18 you will have the perfect you have it right off gate. You have the perfect bushcraft knife for doing your homesteading chores. But got a little bit of work, a little epoxy and elbow grease, and you'll have a very functional knife that will last you a lifetime. Alright guys, so what we've done here is just very gently sanded most of the epoxy off. And what we're going to do now is we're going to sand it just a little bit more. We're going to hit it with some Old English furniture polish, and we're going to seal it all up with some SC Johnson's paste wax. You could use polyurethane or whatever your favorite wood sealer is, but I'm trying to keep this on the budget end. This might be stuff you already got around your house. So I'm trying to keep it kind of in that mentality. But you do you at this point in the build. This is up to you. You want to burn rings in it, you can. If you want to sand it completely and stain it to green, you can. It's up to you. This is all your personal touches now. But I'm going to do a little bit more sanding on it, and then that will probably be the end of the video. When I pick you up, I will kind of show you in the next part how this all turns out, and then we'll move on to the blade, which is the part most people probably already know how to do, but if you don't, then you're in for a treat. Alright guys, we just rubbed this down quickly with some alcohol just to kind of tacky up the surface and kind of degrease it a little bit. We're going to add some Old English lemon oil furniture polish, and then we're going to top it off with this stuff. I like using oil and wax. It seems to do better against the corrosion on your hands, and it's easily reapplicable. The problem with polyurethane is you won't even know it's wearing off until it's wore off, and you're dealing with raw wood, and then you have to sand it all anyway. It's easier just to be able to quickly rub more on it as you need it. So there's that. I'll pick you up when it's done with the oil, and then I'll show you what it looks like after the wax. Alright guys, I did quickly burn a design into it. I rubbed it completely down with that lemon oil. It darkens it back up a hair, but it also keeps it nice and conditioned. So now we're going to top it off with some wax. It's real simple. You just dab this in there, rub it until it gets shiny, and then you just buff it and keep buffing it and keep buffing it until it gets almost shiny. This stuff smells like mineral spirits, so once it stops smelling like mineral spirits, it's completely cured. So we're going to do that, and then I'm going to show you kind of real quick how to do your spark rod. What I do very simply is I line this up with the bottom. Let's see if I can get you in there close. I line that up flush with the bottom of the edge there, or up to the handle even, and then you just mark right there under it, and that'll give you enough metal to where you can just line this up on the base, and it'll help you spark your ferro rod. Another little tip is to get a file that is almost the same width at the base or top or whatever as your ferro rod, and then all you have to do is line this straight up and file it until it goes over, and then it's flat. And then you can go in there with a smaller file, run it back and forth till you have a nice aggressive 90-degree spine, and you'll have a small little notch in there. I'll show you that in the blade video. I actually just looked and realized I don't have aluminum foil, which I need to do the forced patina on this, unless I do boiled vinegar, which I might do too. But we're going to take this one video at a time. I'll pick you back up here in a second with the wax. In fact, I'm just going to show you how to do it. We're going to use another good use for your knife is it helps open up your paint cans. As I said, this stuff smells like mineral spirits, so you're just going to put a little on there, and you're just going to rub it into the wood. That simple. And as you go, you'll kind of see how shiny it goes, and you'll see it flatter in other areas and more glossy in others. I'm going to try to keep it nice and even all the way around. Add more as you need it. Shouldn't need a whole lot. One thing you can do is find a dry spot on the napkin, sort of rub it around. You don't need much, you're just kind of putting a film over top of the wood to sort of help protect it. You know, there is a lot of epoxy still in the grain of the wood, and then that lemon oil and then this stuff, it'll keep it nice and secure for years to come. And then if you're good and you're smart about it, if you're smart about how you go about it, sorry, my daughter's in the background right here. I'll pick you up in a second. And alright guys, that is the completed process. You can't really tell any more glossiness. Oh, there you go, in the sun it kind of glosses up a little bit. And you just buff it, and you notice I'm using a pair of pliers. This is just going to hold it until it dries, because you don't want this kind of getting all over the place. And you can add more as you go. Just kind of take some on your finger if you want to. Kind of move it back and forth. You're going to want to sort of really polish it in there. And it don't really take a whole lot, but you can add it to your heart's content, because it ain't going to hurt the wood at all. You know, this stuff, it soaks it up. You know, this treated wood, it's dry. It soaks in this stuff, and this stuff holds for a long time. You know, you use this on floors. But anyway, that's it for the day, guys. I'm going to go ahead and notch this out, and I will pick y'all up when I do the boiled vinegar patina on the blade. That'll be part 2.